Welcome to the Authentic Man podcast. I am your host, David Chambers. This is a podcast for men who want more and less from life. More deep connection, more emotional intelligence, more self-awareness, and more great sex. And less heartache, less conflict, less overthinking, and less stress. Creating dating lives, sex lives, and relationships that are incredible and authentic. My deepest goal is that you, the listener, can take away what you hear in this podcast and apply it to your life so that you can experience greater happiness, transformational growth, deeper relationships, and profound sexual intimacy. I believe that as men, we are capable of so much more depth than we are shown or led to believe. So join me as we get deep into this. Hello. Welcome to another episode of the Authentic Man podcast. I'm your host, David Chambers, but you know that because you listened to the thing before, or you've listened to loads of episodes before, so you don't need to say all those things. But, nonetheless, I like to, and, in this new year, new you. Not really, but, it's 2022 now. Lots of twos in there, lots of twos. And brand new episode with a wonderful guest, actually, who, I've been following on Instagram for a while. And just like enjoying his posts, and some of the things he posts, I'm not going to say I agree with everything. I don't agree with everything anyone says. I barely agree with what I used to say maybe 2 years ago. But a lot of the words, a lot of what he was saying really kind of leaped out at me. Not just from the post, but also just like the message of really men reaching a higher level of masculinity and reaching a high level of like spiritual development and mental development as well. I got my guest Malik in to talk about, how men can reach this kind of divine masculine state, how we can develop, grow into better men, to be, men more capable of relating and being in marriage and deep spiritual union. A lot of the stuff around the episode really delves into sexual discipline and the importance of sexual discipline, and how the sexual revolution, the sexual liberation has really hurt men because they don't always have the ability to discern and make good choices, and how it's actually hurting the family unit. And we talk a lot about that. We also talk about how, the dysfunction in the family unit that was the kind of pre-sexual liberation family unit, and how that was hurting women. We talk in depth about that. And we talk about how us as men, we can use sexual energy to reach our deepest goals. We talk about feminism. We talk about how, the things that are required for a man to grow also. And then we talk about how, we have this sexual need and how it's dysfunctional and how it stops us from spiritually growing, spiritually evolving into better men. But before that, I'll just let you know that there's a few workshops I'm running. I'm going to leave all the details in the show notes. I've got a couple of Tantra workshops I'm running with my partner Orsa, one for solo people. We've had some amazing reviews over that over the last year. We've got one for couples, and we've also got our Tantric Foreplay, which is really teaching people how to use foreplay as a way to really deepen the connection between two people and get into different states, actually, a really different state of foreplay that we were used to. So that's all in there, as well as my Masculinity workshop, which is also in the show notes as well. You can check that out. That's something I've been writing for a while and really looking forward to that. So, check out that and see, because we talk a lot about in the workshop, I'm going to be talking a lot about some of the principles talked about here about, sexual discipline and so forth, for us to reach our deepest goals inside that. But without further ado, I'll let you get straight into the episode. So today, ladies and gentlemen, I have a guest, a man I've been following on Instagram for a while. And just I think the first thing that jumped out to me, a lot of Instagram, is just the words and the colors of his post. There was just this yellow that leaped out at me one day. And then I read it and I felt this deep resonance of a spiritual calling to something higher for men, but also for women. It talks a lot about the spiritual union and the divine union for men and women. And it's just something it's very rare now. There was a when I read more and more posts, there was this feeling of self-responsibility, a call for all people to take self-responsibility in their lives to reach the place they want to get to. And, I'm sure you all see that so many other people on Instagram, they want to blame outwardly for their problems and why they can't find relationships and happiness. But I'm a deep believer in our own self-responsibility will take us to our promised land, wherever that may be for us. So today I have with me a spiritual teacher, Jay Malik.
Thanks for having me, man. Happy to be here. Ready to get going.
How are you today?
Doing well. Can't complain. Can't complain.
Yeah. Warm and good. Cool. So I think the question I love to hear as well, actually, I don't know the answer to this one, is how did you come to do this work that you do now?
Oh man, that's a journey. I mean, even as a child, like, that's kind of where my spiritual journey started as like a child, as at 10, having like my first kind of like experience with God or the divine or whatever you want to call it. And my family was deeply involved in church, some church leaders, ministers, pastors, that kind of thing. And I've always kind of looked at the world with this very broad stroke of like, okay, what is the general consensus of life? And my 20s, studying over 100 religions and philosophies and synthesizing all that down and looking at the problems that we have, even from our own family dynamics, community dynamics of, okay, common themes of just like spiritual, not corruption, but just like misalignment, and how that plays out in politics, how that plays out in your own creative expression. And then most recently, I kind of saw the barrier to a lot of people's like true expression of self was just, there's so much sexual repression. There's so much sexual energy that's misaligned. And that I started doing research, and that's reflected in like the family structure of United States, Western society as a whole, and even it's happening abroad as well. And so bridging the gap between the family dynamic of today with the ability to achieve your highest heights, whether that's spiritually, emotionally, financially, psychologically, et cetera, it's like they're so connected. They're like extremely, extremely connected. And I think we always make that gap. And that's driven me, right? That's like, it's like a primal driving force, because I think that's the root of everything. We can look at our sexuality and see almost as a predictive measurement of like where we're going in life. It's very interesting. Like if I look at someone, you tell me they're like this, okay, they're probably going to do well. Tell me someone they're like this, I'm like, they may struggle with this, and it may not be in the same areas, but they may have different affinities for different things. And so right now I'm just really passionate about helping people figure out how do you connect your spiritual life and your sexual life, and how that plays a part in what you do for a living, how you pursue your purpose, how you build your family, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Interesting. Wow. It's interesting you talk about sexual energy, because I've been practicing Tantra for a number of years now, and it's really a core tenet of Tantra is like your sexual energy is your life force. It is what gives you your driving energy through life. So if you have a dysfunctional sexual energy and you're not using your sexual energy channeled towards your deepest goals and missions and purpose, and as you said, your whole life will be in misalignment.
Yeah, I think that may be a key like principle for people. It's like sexual energy is your life force energy. It's like we got here through sex. Like, and it's kind of not that we forget, it's just that we don't think about it in that way, but we only got here through sex. And if we give our life force energy away to things prematurely or to the wrong person, then we're a leaky bucket, and we can't pour from an empty cup, right? And we try to pour into passions, but we're also pouring into, especially young men. There's a lot of emphasis on young men to be more promiscuous and to have multiple partners and to cheat, and to like, there's a lot of sexual deviance in men that really come from a rebellion of self, because they're not who they want to be. So they rebel. And it creates more dysfunction, not only for themselves, but for women, for children, for communities, for governments. It's a, like, men are the backbone of the world. Like, we're here to be the backbone and the structure and the stability. And when men are sexually unstable, it creates so much dysfunction for the world. And that is a like red level alert for the world. It's like, this is a problem that we're all facing.
And do you see that, like, maybe in, say, the last 100 years, 200 years, of men becoming more sexually distable? Are we moving towards stability, or are we moving away from sexual stability?
I think prior to the last 100 years, we had a artificial stability where we had a stable structure, right? Like, the structure was stable, the household was stable. This is the way things were done, but the sexual energy wasn't in its optimum state. Like, it's not like we're going from 100% to 0. It's like we're maybe going from 45%, but it looked like 100 because we had the outside structure. No one knows what's going on in the home, if it's going on abuse, marital rape, all those things are happening. And so now, especially the last 50 years, you have, like, a lot of women, 50, 100 years, you have women really combating against the oppression in the home. And then that trickles out to outside of the home, and to where there's a destabilization happening on the parts of women. And then modern men are seeing women adopt this culture, and now they're destabilizing as well, because they're like, okay, that's what y'all want. You want to do what you want to do. It's like, now there's no synergy. There's no polarity. It's like everyone's just, there's war, there's conflict. And so we're going downhill. Like, there's no doubt about it. Like, things can get really, really bad. I just did a podcast. We're talking about the next human crisis of if this continues, there's going to be some huge displacement, because as the family declines, like, we look at the stats the last 50 years in America, from 1960 to 2010, the marriage rate dropped by 40%. But what happens if that drops again 40%? And there's already psychological evidence that children develop better in two-parent households that are healthy and that are capable of providing for them. So we're producing a lower quality of child because they're in a lower threshold of environments. So they don't have their potential is being squashed before they even become 7 years old. Because if you're born to a single mother who is in poverty, then your potential is almost cut in half immediately. That's playing probabilities. The odds of someone succeeding from that environment is very, very slim. It can happen, but it's not going to be, it's a slimmer chance than if there's a two-parent home in the same economic condition. The child has a much higher affinity for success, whatever we measure that by. And so I think we're going downhill, and it's a crisis no one's talking about, because it's a very heavy conversation regarding women's rights, sexual rights, personal liberty, personal choice, autonomy, all those different things. And spiritually, we're not advanced enough. Honestly, we're not advanced enough to actually be able to handle all of the rights that we have and the autonomy that we do have, because we have the right to make the wrong choice. But when you make the wrong choice sexually, it has dire consequences. And then when that cycle repeats and it worsens over time, then what do we look like in 2071, in 50 more years, if the marriage rate drops in half again, and there are more, like, it only normalizes the situation, and we get further and further away from spiritual polarity, which means we're getting further away from whatever someone's spiritual ideal is, whether that's God, whether that's Christianity, whether it's Buddhism, what, that doesn't really matter. It's just we're getting further away from some kind of spiritual essence that is meant to guide humanity. It's like the only thing that can guide us is this thing that's so far beyond us, and we get away from that and we get very tied into the world and what we want to do. We're going to self-destruct.
So I'm hearing is that he said there was this artificial structure, which was the family structure, right? There was the kind of enforced family structure of you have to get married at a certain age and you should have children. But it was a bit of a false structure because it was quite shadowy, because you could see an outside structure that looked okay and safe, but inside, who knew what was going on in the home? And there was the oppression and so forth, and even financial control and things like that. And now we've kind of, with women's rights, what's blown open is this like, no, there's no need for marriage, because it can be a very toxic environment for a lot of women and for children as well, right? So now we have, everyone's got a lot of rights, equal rights legally, to go and do as they will, and they are actioning those rights. And from both sides, there's a lot of sexual freedom which is being exercised, that's causing a destabilization of the family unit, which means that we're having a lot of single parents, a lot of sons and daughters who are fatherless, and some even motherless as well.
Yeah.
And it means that either those children are having the best chance to succeed in life and be successful, both financially, spiritually as well, because they're not having that masculine, feminine energy that's coming from two parents.
Yeah.
So what I'm hearing is what's needed is a level of spiritual growth for men and women to be able to have the rights that they've got and still choose within there. It's like, okay, I have this rights to sleep with anybody I want, but actually I'm gonna just find the person who I deeply want to be with and be with that person. And maybe you meet one person that's not quite right, and but you are choosing from a point of view of like, what am I trying to create in my life? Am I hearing right?
It's intentional. It's and it requires deep reflection. It requires personal growth, because if I want to have a family, then let me be in position to have a family. Let me work on these areas of my life. It's just making family first. It's like putting family as a priority. And I think we don't do that now because we have the sexual liberty. But before, like I said, it was unstable. But some people got married just to have sex. Like, I want to have sex, so let's get married. That was a real thing that happened. Like, imagine getting married to someone because you wanted to have sex with them. That's crazy. That happened. Now it's like, I'm gonna have sex and not get married. Like, and I might have a child at the same time. It's like, well, still not marrying you. And there are people who they're in this. And I'm not saying this to say that, I disagree with the idea of liberation, the idea of autonomy, and, people having the option. But what comes with options, responsibility. And if we have a responsibility to ourselves and to others, especially to our family and our future children, then that means we have to do some kind of development work to make sure that we're executing that option correctly, or at least not in a self-destructive, self-sabotaging way. Because there's too many people. There's millions and millions of people who are with people, and they're like, I know for a fact I would never marry this person a day in my life. Like, there's not a chance I would marry this person. And it's crazy, but I will share my body with this person consistently, but there's no chance I marry this person. None. And whether the dynamic is good or bad, even just that is like, okay, I'm sacrificing working on myself or being available to the person because I'm in a space of need so much that I'm willing to be with someone I know I don't see a future with. And that reflection has to come from the deep spiritual work. It's like, who am I being in this moment? Do I feel in alignment with where I am? Do I feel this is productive for where I'm going? Because your spiritual life should be getting you in tune with your higher self and the higher visions of yourself in a practical sense. And there's nothing practical about sleeping, especially for young men who financially may not be in situations to even have stability on their own, to sleep with a multitude of women. And like, that's going to cap you. I know we see celebrities who have multiple, like, you're not the multi-millionaire celebrity, and it still costs them. But the average working man sleeping with multiple women, it's a recipe for disaster at the end of the day. And I think it starts with the average man becoming more stable and more disciplined in sexuality, and that will trickle over into, the rest of the community. But we got a long way to go. We have a very long way to go.
So he said in there that there's like, people are with people they have no intention, they would never want to be with on a longer term basis, right? And there's a need they're trying to fulfill internally that they're not even necessarily aware of that they're trying to fill. Yeah. And do you see that as is it almost like a trauma-based need to have somebody they're not even aware of that they're trying to feed this, or maybe even it's a desire for a deep spiritual union that they can feel, but they aren't able to know that's what it is. But the closest they can get to that is just a body.
Yeah. It's like, if that, like, trauma is a very powerful energy. And when you're trauma bonding, it feels like empathy. Right? Like, it's like, oh, this person gets me. And it can feel like this is the person. But even though like your conscious mind is like, no, but you feel like it's a yes, but you know that it's a no. But that emotion, especially when you start exchanging sexual energy, becomes like, logic goes out the window at that point, right? Because if you ask someone like, hey, would you get pregnant with this guy? And like, whatever, they were like, no. But you go to that one moment, you guys are having unprotected sex and something happens. It's like, logically, you knew that this was a very high chance of a pregnancy risk, but you also consciously know you wouldn't want to marry and get pregnant by this guy, but you did it anyway. You ask the guy, would you want to get this girl pregnant? He's like, no. Well, why wouldn't you wear a condom? I don't like condoms. Logically, it doesn't make sense, right? Like, it makes zero sense logically. Like, this is not what I want. I'm not ready for this. But you're doing the thing that people who are ready for that do. And it's just, we're in a cycle. It's a cycle because sex makes us feel good, right? That's the thing. Like, sex is a very powerful thing. It's like, I feel bad. I want someone. I got the person. Now I'm bonding. I have empathy. The next thing is like, I want to connect. Like, I want some pleasure from this, like the deepest pleasure possible. And we're not, as humans, as animals, we're not going to stop that process. And that's been my thing. I've been telling people, like, we're not going to stop having sex. Now, you can have a period of celibacy or abstinence and discipline to prepare yourself for the right person. But it's like first thing is like getting people to realize, like, yo, the person you have sex with is a very strong indicator for where you're going in life. It's very strong. It's like, if you have sex with someone you don't see as a potential wife or a mother, then it's like, that's, and really not wife and mother, and that's really indication on where your values and sexual energy is. Because why would you have sex with someone you don't see as a wife and a mother? Because, like, that's traditionally the role that we assign. If a woman's having sex with a man that who hasn't, not only does she see as a husband and a father, but he has displayed that he is interested in being a husband and a father. Like, I'm not here to, create arbitrary rules for people like, oh, you, like, ideally, sure, you want to be married before having sex, but that's not really the norm. So I'm being practical in the sense that, okay, hey, we're all adults. We've had sex. Now it's about your sexual selection process, your mate selection process. Is that really efficient, or is it spiritually efficient as well as financially, psychologically, emotionally, all those different components? Because it's not just sex. Like, it may last in that moment, but there is consequences that come behind that. And we have to think about that from a spiritual standpoint, and not just a, short-term pleasure, short-term connection, short-term hookup. All is cool, because that comes from need. And instead of the sex, address the need so you can be prepared for the partner that you're really meant for. Because the need is what's stopping you. If you don't stop the need, you have sex with this person, and then they'll leave, and you'll still have the need. And it may be worse. Like, damn, now I need some more sex. And now it's a pattern. And it happens to men. It's almost like an addiction. It happens to men so early, like 16, 17, 18, 19, here, sex. And the 18-year-old man is not in any position to be a man yet. Like he's not in any position. He's in the most vulnerable state he's probably ever been in at 18 years old, because he's now facing the world for the first time and like, I don't know what I'm doing, but here's some sex. So the I don't know what I'm doing, I don't know my purpose, I don't know where I'm going in life is masked by, well, I can pursue women and that can give me a feeling of winning, but you're not winning, you're losing. And you're not taking into account the fact that, okay, I'm not moving forward in life, but I'm getting women, and it just keeps it going. And how does that man enter marriage? A man who's had 30, 40, 50 sexual partners, how does he enter marriage? How does he view sex? How does he view spiritual connection? Is that even a priority? And so now you have marriages, even people who get married, their sexual life is kind of distorted, because you may have two people who came in with different sexual histories, but their perception of sex is not anything that has to do with the spiritual being, anything to do with synergy, anything to do with polarity. It's just a physical act you do to feel good. And that is what even strains marriages, on top of the fact that those marriages may not be even ideally constructed. So it's like there are so many layers, and this all affects the next generation of children, and they will normalize it. And who's going to teach them how to heal from it if the parents haven't? So it's like it becomes a more difficult problem the longer it goes on. So we're like trying to stop a speeding train right now before it turns to a rocket ship. And I don't think people realize how much of a human crisis this will be in 100 years, in 200 years, in 300 years, maybe even the next 10, 15, 20 years, that we're already seeing signs of destruction. Like society is unraveling at the core, and it's going to take a lot of strong men to stop it in its tracks.
And it's almost like, because in the past, there was a bit of a cap on the availability to sex to a certain degree, because of the oppression of women to a certain degree kept this cap, and it's exploded because of that. And also, one of the things that really jumped into my head as you were talking is that one of the added problems to this is that men at 15, 16, 17, 18 can get availability to sex, right? And I could talk from my personal experience, was like, I can have sex. This feels good. More women want to have sex. I can have sex with multiple women. Wow, this is amazing. And on top of that, the other men, are going, hey, dude, well done, man. The winning isn't just the physical act. The other men, are then telling you, you're winning. So then you're feeling like, I'm, feeling that success of being a man, because equally a lot of us men have grown up without fathers, which means we don't really know what it means to be a man. So we're searching for the validation of other men around us. And this loop, this cycle keeps us, what I call really immature. It keeps us really at this level one of just like, how can I fulfill this instant desire I have right now? Or this desire I have now and I've had for maybe a week, which is sex, food, drink, those sorts of instant gratification, clothes, consumerism, I think is also a part of this. Is like, I want to feel good right now over maybe say, okay, in 10 years time, I want to have a couple of houses and properties, which means that don't have to worry about money so much. I'm going to work hard now to create that later. Or I'm going to, search for a purpose. We get sidetracked by this consumerism, sex, drink, drugs, and they just keep us in this very immature state, and we almost get fed on by the society around us. Like energetically, we're fed on, we're taxed, we don't earn more, we lose our energy everywhere. And then
it's crazy.
Yeah.
It's almost like it's just like a self-sabotaging thing. It's self-destructive.
It's almost as if you looked at it how it is, you're like, is the game rigged? Is the game built like this?
Yeah. That's when we think about it in that way, like, this is a game, right? Like this, if we can all just agree it's a game, like we all play to win, or we play to lose, and by playing to win in the short term, like we want to win right now and we want to lose later because we're trying to win right now. But it is a game, and that's part of the spiritual cycle of evolution. It's like, what would you sacrifice in the short term for your long-term benefit? And I think this is what religion has tried to crystallize, like in society, of like the idea of losing is hell, basically, and winning is heaven. But it's not necessarily the heaven and the hell, it's the states of being and the actions that lead one to those places, theoretically. If you live this lifestyle, you're probably gonna suffer more often than not.
Mm. Mm. And people aren't even aware of there's another option, because they're in the cycle, they're in the hamster wheel.
Yeah, it's this is the spiritual process. So this is what makes a man a man. What he breaks into divinity by understanding this process of, this is a game, and some men lose. Like the idea of understanding that hierarchy on a deeper level than personal surroundings is what really awakens a man, because men are here to be self-conscious about their position in society. That's how we protect and provide, because we're conscious about, do we have the resources necessary to enact this? Do I have, and if I don't have the resources, do I have the ability to get them? And if not, do I have the skills? And if not, do I have the patience to develop those skills? So it starts there, but patience and development of skills require sacrifice of time somewhere else. And this is where the conundrum of like the hamster wheel comes. If I'm not sacrificing time here, that means I'm spending it over here and I'm not developing myself. And maybe because the development of a man is like what is that curve called? I forgot, exponential curve. Like in the beginning, 18 to 25, everything may look very, very similar, because like the wages of men typically increase, every 5 to 10 years, like significantly. So at 18, you're maybe not making any money. So sacrificing at 18 looks stupid, because you're not going to make anything more significant than anyone else at 18. But at 19, it still looks stupid. At 20, 25, it may starts peeking its head a little bit. Not nothing crazy, but it starts diverging. By the time you get to 30, you have almost like we're going different. There's a fork in the road, it looks like. They can still catch up, but it's very, very difficult. They have to do a lot of sacrificing. By 35, 40, 45, 50, if you haven't been on that path, you're done. You're toast. Mm. You can still get back on it, but now you got to sacrifice a lot more. You probably have responsibilities. You probably have a family to look after. You probably have a job you don't want to have. You probably you're living in hell. You're in a state of hell because you're not on your path. And you're not on the path because you spent all this time diverging from it. And now you want to get back to it at 50 or at 40 or 35, when you spent the last 15 of it looking for short-term gratification, looking for that instant pleasure, looking for that instant fulfillment. And this is what happens with men. What I tell women is that women have to be aware of the hierarchy. But when this was kind of capped, women had to understand the hierarchy, because their status was based on their husband's status. Now you have women able to earn. They have a more masculine nature of measuring their status based on their accomplishments, their wealth. And so they can choose a inferior man, so to speak, and that theoretically, because I don't need his status. I have my own. But that creates chaotic households. And so we have to go back to remembering this dominance hierarchy and where men fit on it. And every man is on a certain path. Maybe one man will get at 35, maybe one will get at 40, but he doesn't need to have children or a household or a family until he figures it out. Mm. And it's but that requires sacrifice on both parties. So that's just kind of where we are. It's an interesting dynamic, but like I said, it doesn't get easier, but it's not meant to be easier. It's meant to be difficult. It's meant to be a challenging process, because that's what spiritual growth is. It's just a matter of, are men self-conscious enough to say, hey, what do I want to be in 10 years? Where am I at right now? What do I want to be? Who's ahead of me? Who's under me in my same peer group, my same age group? What do they do differently than I did? Why is this person younger than me and more successful than me? What am I missing? And when men are not success conscious or not hierarchy conscious, they lose themselves. It's very, very easy to lose yourself as a man if you're not sure of where you fit in the pecking order.
Get it. And when you say success, So I know sometimes when people hear the word success, they think of financial success and job title and status. But I see success as a much broader term when it comes to when we are evolving spiritually. When you say success, what do you mean by success?
Well, I define the first root of success as, well, definition, right, of success is like the achievement of an aim or purpose, which means that inherently we all have an aim or a purpose. And the first measure of success is, has a man found his purpose, or is he on a path to purpose? Is he successful in even finding the path to success for himself? That's one. And then two, your success should bring about material means and structures to able to have that stability. Like the masculine energy is structure, rigidness, stability. So it's a foundational, so that a family can be built upon. So a man needs to have those two things primarily before he can begin operating, because we can look at emotional and spiritual, and the problem with those two things when it comes to like emotional health, spiritual health, is that for a man, those things cannot be relied on independently. And what I mean by that is a man can, and I coach a lot of men with these things, very spiritual men, their psyche breaks down, not because of their lack of spirituality or lack of belief. It's because their material conditions is not where it needs to be, or their purpose, what they do for a living, is not fulfilling to their psyche. And so they feel they have a lower sense of self-worth. And that self-worth distorts their vision or viewpoint or worldview of the dominance hierarchy as a whole. So like, because they're not successful in their heart of hearts, as far as like, I want to be doing this, they view the world in a very different way. It's very fragmented, and that impacts how they interact with women just by, consequence. And so I always look at like, hey, can we find what you're here to do? And then can we have that, what you're here to do, supply means for self? And then you can start building on that. Like now you can go deeper into the emotions. You can go deeper into the spiritual. You need those things for sure. Like you're a spiritual, maybe you're a foundation underneath your subconscious, but it's the reason men are meant to go outward. Like the penis goes outward for a reason. Like the sexual energy is needed to go out. And so a man is just, he has to contribute. Like a man who does nothing, who doesn't, even if a man is wealthy and he's retired, he wants to go back to work. Like a man who's amassed fortunes, there's a damaging like energy to the psyche when a man is not contributing something. It's just in us. It's weird, but we have to contribute something. And what we contribute is almost more important because we want to feel fulfilled in our contribution. So he has to have those things. And what he gets back from that allows his family to prosper. And so that's when they're like, okay, I need resources to get to my family. It's not even for me at this point, because I'm doing what I love. I just need to have them safe. I can live in a box. Like men are very like survive. Like we can live in a car. We can live on the street. Like we'll figure it out. But you never want your wife and your child to live on the street with you. But as long as I'm doing what I love, I can live on the street corner. But it's just, how do we enact that purpose without the sacrifice of sexual discipline?
What I'm hearing is you're saying that to really move up the levels, right, is to find purpose. And when we are devoted to something that we love and brings us spiritual happiness, as well as making a difference in the world, and I'm putting a few words in there as well, making a difference in the world, that the financial means start to gravitate towards us by the simple attraction, because we are putting ourselves and our love into the world. And as a cycle, the energy goes out and we bring it back in. And through that, we have stability, we have structure underneath us to hold us and our families. And the spiritual maturing and the emotional maturing can come quite easily after that. So one of the things that I can hear some listeners saying is like, some men might look like they are spiritually maturing, so we say spiritually developing because they have financial means, right? But in fact, their financial means may be built on inheritance, on work they hate. But one could look at them and go, okay, they have means, they have structure. How do we view those men? How do those men move up the levels?
So that's a good question, because that goes back to the point of, there's some innate attraction activity, but the dominant energy of men is masculine, is to go hunt, right? Like we're almost like of course we're still attraction based because everything is still magnetized, but it's still much more grab and get it kind of energy. And you don't have to love what you do, because purpose, like I said, that first purpose of just animal survival is just, can I secure stability for myself? So you may have a job you hate, but if it creates stability for yourself, and then it allows you to think about things beyond survival, that may be just step one. Or if you inherit some money, man still has to figure out, okay, now that I have my material survival is done, what do I want to do? So we're need-based creatures first. Like, this needs to be done. Like, that's part of masculinity, is not only purpose, but responsibility of like, this is what we have to do as men. Like, if you were on a plane and the plane crashed and it had 10 men, 10 women, the men would do certain things just innately. Like, we're going to find shelter. We're going to get the women, like, just, it would come down to that. Like, the women are not going to go build a hut. Like, the men are like, let's build this thing. Let's get a fire started. Let's go find some food. That's what men would do because we need to do it. It's just that we live in a society where the quality of life is a little bit different. We have technology. We have iPhones and all this fancy stuff that we can get this quick pleasure out of, that we forget that, we're primal. Like, masculine energy is very, very primal. I got to get shit done. And that is completely opposite of the sexual, like, promiscuous man of, and maybe sometimes you can do both, but most people can't. Like, maybe there's somebody out there who's very, very hardworking and he's just promiscuous on the side. Possible, but it's not likely. Like, and why would that man do that if there's not some other deeper void? Because a man who's hyper successful in one area of life, who chooses to be with women he doesn't enjoy, has deeper emotional, spiritual problems. So I wouldn't view those men as, these enlightened spiritual beings. They just have material resources, and we can kind of do the balance on what comes first. And I've been on both ends of the spectrum as far as like helping people and myself, as far as like, okay, do I put money first and then do the spiritual? Do I do the spiritual first and then do the money? Like, what's the order? The reality is I got to do both. So I have to do both at the end of the day. And if I don't do both, I'm going to suffer either way. If I'm deeply spiritual and I don't have enough to just live my life, at least in a material way, I'm going to suffer. If I have all the money in the world, but I'm spiritually suffering, I might as well be dead. So either way it goes, a man has to know how to integrate spiritual and material.
And I'm interested to know your thoughts on the many ideas, that some people have around that we're living in an age where men are being feminized. Is this something you think is deliberately occurring, or is it occurring out of a rejection of the masculinity we saw that came before us, which goes inside what you're saying about marriage, of the oppression and the violence of women and men rejecting that?
I think that's like a twofold thing. I think one, it's realizing how powerful the feminine is, and as far as like, she attracts based on her collective energy. And so women are subconsciously magnetizing men to be more feminine. When we think about from the fact that women raise the children, like if the woman is raising the children, like we got to look at this as a really totality thing. If the women are raising the children, there's 40% less marriage. There's more single parent households. That means by nature, there should be more feminine men. Over the last 50 years, there should be a lot more feminine men than there were 50 years ago. And then you add in sex culture, you add in pop culture, you add in all these different things, you add in the political narrative, you have all these different components. Of course, men should be more feminine now. Because why wouldn't they be? Why would men be more masculine now than before? And now the conundrum is the woman is realizing she still has primal needs. So the woman in essence has fucked up a little bit. She's wanted the liberation. Granted, everyone should have their own autonomy. She wanted to be able to act in this dominance hierarchy. Granted, autonomy, fine. But now, at some point, there comes a time where a woman gets in tune with her primal energy. And there's a lot of things we could talk about on this topic of why women kind of veered off, but you have a lot of different things in the woman's bodies today that were not in a woman's body in the 1960s. We talk about birth control, different chemicals, different hormonal agents, a lot of different things that take the woman off her natural path. We can say, oh, it helps with acne, it helps with regulating your period. But how have women existed for millions of years and not needing these things? And all of a sudden, women need these things. That's another debate. People can look at the science behind that, but there are way more chemicals in a woman's body today than ever before. So a woman, you add on top of that the chemical component, which changes hormones, which definitely change the way a woman is behaving. You add on sexual liberation, and you add on a stressful work culture, then you're going to have a more masculine-based woman who's not focused on family. She's focused on survival and self, and the child is kind of like a byproduct. And if the man is not there, then the child is almost like a source of like resentment to a degree. So I'm going to either, make this child the opposite, or it's more control. It's not nurturing. It's more like control and trying to really force a narrative or ideas or behaviors or patterns onto children. And the children are seeing this from not just their household, but they see it. They don't know it's not normal because they're seeing it across the community. All the kids are like this. All the kids have single moms here, or all the dads are just co-parenting, or all the marriage households, all the women get beat in this community. Right? This is normalized. Or all the pastors cheat on their wives. Like, there are so many things that are, and maybe they've always been there. Maybe these things have always existed, but they're out in the light now. And in all of this, we have more feminine men and we have more masculine women. But now the problem is women don't really want feminine men. Now it's like, oh shit, now we have a problem. We have two sexually liberated people who don't want the other person, but they still want the connection of sex because we're human, we're animals still. We're not thinking about, I wonder if this person is very feminine or masculine. We don't care. We just want sex. So now we have like I said, the train is speeding down the tracks because men don't really want masculine women either.
Yeah.
Like, not to marry, and if they want to, it's more of a mother-son dynamic, if that's the case. But it's not a healthy marriage. So you have two people who want something different, and they want something that really emulated something 50 years ago, which now can kind of heighten us like, wait a minute, maybe we had the energy wrong, but the structure was correct. Maybe we should just focus on changing the energy of the structure and not dismantling the structure. Well, guess what? We're still not even at that point consciously, because you still have a radical feminist movement that's like, hey, dismantle the patriarchy, and now you have more men doing red pill and like going their own way. Like, so you have these two radical movements that are pretty much like, we don't need the other person, but we will still enacting sex with the other person. And it's like dysfunctional. And what kind of children do those people create? And this is where like the spiritual development part has to come in, because, hey, men still get to choose, right? Like a divine masculine man stepping into himself, he still gets the pick of the litter, right? And that's what it comes down to. And this is like where it's a great time. I don't know. Like it's a really great time because it's the power dynamic has really inversed to where the competition level for men has dropped dramatically. Like I tell somebody, like, you work hard, you can outpass 50, maybe 75% of men, because most men today are lazy. It's like extremely late, like not even like a little lazy, like extremely lazy. And you can get past most men by just simply working hard. Like you don't have to be skilled, you ain't got to be good. You just got to be consistent, and you can outwork most men in society. Now that next tier of 25% to 10% requires skill development, communication skills, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But top 75 ain't bad. Like, I mean, top 25 ain't bad. And there's a higher demand. It's interesting. Like top 25% men have so much demand. 3 out of 4 women want 1 out of 4 men. So now the man has so much leverage. There's 3 women for every one of him. He gets to pick the best 3 of the bunch. And this leaves a huge gap for the men who are 3 out of 4. Now, the issue I have now with this, like, sure, I get the market. Demand is there for the high value men. But what about the average men? Because there's always been average men in the middle of the pack. And average men still deserve respect, honor as masculine men, even if they're not hyper successful. So then we go to, well, is the standard that women are holding men to fair? I would say no, but it's weird because the evidence shows that there's not a high standard for sex, but women have a high standard for marriage. So it's interesting that women will give their bodies, they will even give their womb to a man they don't deem valuable, but they won't marry a man they don't deem valuable. And this is where we have the disconnect, because why do you want this top 25% guy when the guy who's at top 50%, top 60% is a good guy? Financially, you guys can build a household together in a home, but because the woman's mind is not focused on home, she's not family focused, and she had a child before she's married and she gets into her mid 30s, now she wants a marriage or a family where she has these higher standards, but again, it's just dysfunctional. Like, what is she going to do now? You don't want the average guy anymore. You want the guy up here, but the guy up here doesn't want you. And he has more options. Like, so y'all playing out of the cards are not being played right. You don't like these feminine men, but you created them. And now you have these men up here that you want, but you can't get because he has more options. So now you got to pick your poison. And it's not really a hard thing to do, but it's just like, can you learn how to respect the masculine for what it is versus for what the status level you want? Because every woman can't marry a man in the top 10%. It's mathematically impossible. Unless y'all want to have every man in the top 10% has 10 wives. That's the only way it's possible. That's the only way. And that's not financially responsible to do that. So what are we doing here? And it's like, okay, either women are going to become a lot more competitive. And again, it's so masculine, though. It's very masculine. Either we're going to have women being competitive for men and trying to place themselves in a dominance hierarchy, which men already do anyway with women. We look at a woman, okay, how beautiful is she? What's her personality? What's her character? That's the first 3 things a man really observes about a woman. How she looks, maybe her voice, her personality. Like, those are the primary things that we first look at that places women in a hierarchy. And men, because we're very honest about ourselves, generally, in a broad sense, maybe not in a very narrow sense, but in a broad sense, we're like, okay, I can't get Beyonce. Like, I know I can't get Beyonce. I'm not finna, like, that's a dumb shot to shoot. Men are very aware. So it's like, okay. And we're like, subconsciously, we know, okay, this person, I can get, that's my speed. Men, it's like we inherently know this. Men have to know this because it's the thing that drives our procreation. Our legacy building is based on us finding a woman to procreate with us. That's our whole family's focus is, can we find a woman that will procreate with us? Well, now it's become easier for men because women are not requiring marriage for that. So it's like, okay, I can just sleep with anybody. But what the average guy's not good enough, but he's good enough to smash, but not good enough for marriage. Or it's just so chaotic. And I don't think women look at it correctly, or men. And it's just like that tier is so damaging. I'm like, yo, my advice for people is like to skip to the top. I mean, and women, this is what we don't realize, like women can't skip to the top. They can do a lot of spiritual work for sure, but men are still attracted. Like a man is not going to find a woman unattractive physically and be like, okay, she's very spiritual, I want to marry her. That's not what a man's going to do, because men are still visual creatures. I have to be attracted to my partner in some kind of way. Maybe she's not conventionally attracted to most people. That's fine. But as long as the person likes them, as long as he likes the woman, that's all that matters. But he's not going to pick someone he doesn't find attractive. A woman can't really change her attractiveness. Like and we have the cosmic surgery. I'm not cosmic surgery. What is the word?
Cosmetic
surgeries. We have plastic surgeries, all these things, implants, all these things that women are trying to enhance their appearance. And usually those things appease to certain kinds of men. So they don't even know they're still doing themselves disservice, because there may be a very successful guy, maybe top 40%, top 30% guy, stable, no children, working on his purpose, finding himself, going deeper within himself, looking for a partner. He's like, oh, you were attractive when you were in your natural state, but now I wouldn't want to deal with you. And now she's competing for a guy in the top 1% because she thinks that's what he wants. And now she's like, your probability of success is going down as a woman, and a man's probability is going higher. It's like there are going to be a lot of women who are going to be displaced in this situation, and a lot of men who are going to have easy, like free pickings, basically, because those women are going to be just available for sex. And we're going to get to like a very weird society, and women have to be mindful of like what they're bringing out in men. And if a man wants to be successful and prosper with a family, he has to be mindful of his purpose. Because when a man is successful, he has demand. Like that's all a man has to do is work hard and become successful in his own right. There's going to be demand. He's going to have the means and also the confidence to, I can pick who I want to pick. If I go to the dealership, they're like, okay, Lamborghini, Range Rover, Tesla, like what do I want? That's what a man is able to do. A woman can't be like, hey, drive me, take me home. Here are the keys. Test drive it. I don't have to buy it. There's a new Range Rover. I like that range. This was nice. I like this test drive, but that range, that been calling my name. It's calling my name. And the market is just not, it's almost like we forgot because how things are now. But the market 50 years ago was very much like this. Women were like, hey, you better find a good husband. You may not be like, you don't have time to try to find the top 10% guy. If that's not your normal, then you need to find what's around you and get married and have children before you get too old and nobody wants to marry you. Because usually the guy who's successful, men can have children in their 60s. Mm. But guy's 45 years old and wants to have children, he's not going to marry a 40-year-old woman. Now we have the medicine that it's capable, it's possible. It's very possible to have children at that age, but it's like he has to probably know that woman beforehand. He's not going to marry her at 45. He probably marry at 40 and like, okay, we have a child relatively soon. Like, but he's not going to pick her after she's infertile. It's like, okay, that's like, if he wants children, at least. If you don't want children, then hey, do what you do. But men who want children want women who can produce children. And if women are putting so much emphasis on the dominance hierarchy as far as status and wealth, then that often takes that first 10 to 15 years of workforce. That means puts you around 35. It puts you in that emergency zone. Like, gotta do this soon. Like, if I don't do this soon, I mean, I gotta meet somebody, like them enough, date them, be compatible, want kids, get married, have children. Like, damn, I gotta do all this in how long? At 35, you got a short window of getting all that done. It's not the fact that you can't have children at 35. It's like, can you get all those qualifications up in 2 years? Maybe not, because people date for 2, 3, 4 years, like, oh, it's not working. And if at 35, a 35-year-old woman honestly hasn't displayed the characteristics of a healthy partnership because she hasn't been chosen for marriage at that point. So it's very different for men, because a man can be working and doing his life things up until 35, 45. He's not getting chosen by anybody. He's doing the choosing. But if a woman has been with multiple partners and they all didn't work out, like, damn, you're the common denominator. Like, what happened? Like, why did none of them work out? If you just accept bad men, like, if you're terrible at picking men, which means maybe I should go because this may not work. Or there's some kind of quality you haven't displayed in your partnerships. Like, there's no long gap. Like, okay, I wasn't dating for 5 years. Okay, cool. That may make sense. But if you've been dating every single year since you were 18 and you're 36, something's wrong, because the job of the feminine is to support the masculine. And that means you're not very good at either partnership, or there are some things you're not knowing, or just some trauma you're attracting. There are some things that have to be addressed. But if you're working, you're not worried about none of that. If you're worried about work more than you worry about family, then you're not even concerned with, you're just like, these men aren't on my level. These men aren't for me. And you may not be doing the self-reflective work that a lot of women are missing. I talked to a lot of women who are VPs, COOs, executive sales managers, entrepreneurs, making bank, 35, 36, 37 years old. I can't find any good men. It's like, you've been out here for 20 years. If you got this illustrious career, you're surrounded by successful men all the time. So a woman who has a higher probability of being around successful men, but still not being chosen to be a partner, it's like, hey, David, if you saw a Range Rover, it was like, hey, man, free range right here. You want it? Shit, why not? Free Lamborghini, man, on me. You like, for real? Yeah, man, take it. You're gonna grab it. Men do not run across amazing women that are ready for marriage, who are ready for partnership, who support them in a healthy, feminine, masculine way, and be like, okay, I don't want this no more. Like, men don't do that. Now, men may get a woman they don't want to be with and run the course of it because they're not really in tune with themselves, because they have a lack of a need, which means they're probably attracting a partner who also has a lack of a need. They're trauma bonding. So if a woman is attracting that, it's like you were probably in that state and attracting that same kind of man. But a high masculine man is not going to just turn down a highly like compatible partner, because he's looking for that. Because it's hard finding them, because the roles have kind of reversed a little bit. We have masculine women and with higher standards. Like, they want you to be a top 10% guy. It's like, damn, do you need a man making 6 figures? Your dad made 30,000. Why do you need a man making 100K? Your mom made 40K. Like, why do you need, like, it's like the material focus for women has increased dramatically, and they don't even know like why that is. Like, yo, a man just needs to make 200 grand to be with you. Like, that's insane. So as their demands increase, that lowers value. But when they see that they think that their goals are improbable, they settle when it comes to sex. It's like a repeated pattern. Like, all these women I talk to, high achieving women, partners, not compatible. Like, not even, like, you were like, why would you even do that? Like, why would you mix peanut butter and applesauce? Like, the jelly's right there. Like, I didn't want jelly, because they weren't ready. They spiritually, mentally, emotionally, psychologically were not ready for family and marriage, because they thought they would have to sacrifice career and money and status for them. And this is where the conundrum of the modern woman is. Like, are you willing to sacrifice those things? And now they are at 35, 36, 37. But guess what? Now you're the men who have like delayed that process for themselves of gratification, most likely want a younger woman, one, if it's available. And if he doesn't have children, he wants to have children. So like, now he's dealing with a woman who's prioritized herself her entire life, and now all of a sudden she's going to learn how to be a feminine woman. That's not an easy switch around. Like, it's not that easy of a switch, and people kind of devalue the process of spiritual maturation when it comes to women. It's like, oh, if a man's masculine, I'll be feminine. It's like, that's not really how it works. That's like if a man's saying, I'll be masculine when a woman is feminine. It's like, that's like, a feminine woman will not make you more masculine. She may help polarize it, but she can't make you more masculine. In fact, y'all will go to the inverse direction. She will become more masculine, trying to make you masculine. You will become more feminine, but her trying to make you more masculine. So if a woman has been practicing masculinity her entire life, she thinks, I'm just going to meet a great man and I'll be fine. It's like, no, you got to you have to prioritize your spiritual being. And those women don't understand that path oftentimes. They're like, they think it's just on the man. It's like I said, the accountability and personal responsibility of your spiritual growth as men and as women is independent of the other. It's like, I have to prepare my magnet for my opposite. I can't try to force every woman to be my opposite. I got to do my magnet work so that I attract mine naturally. She has to do hers so she can attract me naturally. When that happens, it's a seamless process. But it's just we're so far out of accountability spiritually because of the structure does not force us to anymore. And it's kind of like it revealed how broken things really were in marriages. Like this is just maybe this is the 60s out in the open.
Yeah.
Maybe it's for how people already felt the whole entire time. Maybe men were like, I just want to fuck everybody. I don't care. Maybe women were like, I just want to make my own money. And maybe that's where we are. Maybe we think we're, regressing. Maybe we just always been this bad and we just didn't know it. I don't know.
And maybe what we're being revealed to us now is out in the open and we can see it. It's like before, it's like, maybe the 60s and previous, we were living in a bit of a marriage shadow, right? Because within marriages, there was this shadow element of oppression, violence, marital rape, and so forth. And now that shadow has been brought into the light and we see that. We see what was happening. And we're like, shit, we don't want that. None of us really want that, right?
Yeah.
Apart from some men who want to go back to that way of being, but I think they're in the smaller number, right? Because they're just upset because, like Red Pill and Mito, those guys are just upset because they're not getting selected because a lot of those guys, they're really low down on the kind of spiritual scale, financial scale, right?
Yeah.
So now we got this shadow that's been brought to the light. So I guess the next step from this evolution of when you bring something to the light, it brings consciousness to it. So now we are in a state now where we get to choose. We get to consciously choose. Well, what I'm hearing is to make that conscious choice, we have to have done the spiritual, emotional work to do that. So, and obviously we're at this stage now where men who have been successful, especially financially, even those men who are financially successful but haven't done the spiritual work or the emotional work, they appear to be in the top levels and they get women and then they have chaotic relationships. We can talk celebrities, we can talk athletes, these sorts of people because they have the means. Whereas the men who have possibly done the spiritual and emotional work that don't have the means, they also, I think, have a leverage over the average man who of the same level of money because there's enough women that will notice that man and go, hey, he's spiritually mature.
Mm-hmm.
I can work with this sort of guy, and maybe I just need to give him some help around some structure. Maybe even the sort of woman who is maybe slightly more masculine can pick up a man like that and make that into a beautiful relationship. So I guess the question I have is, what can a man do if he's wanting to do this move up we'll call it the stairway to heaven, the spiritual work. I know when I was taught the stairway to heaven, it was through Tantra and it's a multiple orgasm, but we'll talk stairway to heaven. He wants to move up the levels and do the spiritual work, right? And become a more divine embodiment of the masculine. What are the kind of, let's say for argument's sake, for time, what are the 3 things that he needs to like laser focus, pinpoint himself on other than sexual discipline?
I think that might be simple. I don't know. My first brain just said God, family, purpose. And I say God, and I use that term loosely, but a man who is not confined by some kind of principle or ethics, which is like, the ethos of a man, like what is guiding you? That can be in the form of philosophy, it can be the form of science, it can be the form of spirituality, the form of religion, but there has to be something outside of you that is larger than yourself. Because a man who doesn't have those things, he's going to have a fractured ego because he thinks he's the center of everything. You got to have something that is so much larger than you. And I think that's where spirituality and God play in that part. That should shift a man's behaviors and patterns if he really is, submitted to that. Then we go to family, as in then my next role in life is to prepare. May not be in position right now, but it's like, how can I get prepared for a family and not enter this in prematurely when I'm not ready right now, financially, emotionally, psychologically, whatever the case may be. I'm not ready for a family right now, but let me get prepared. And then purpose is, if I have those two things, purpose will reveal itself. Like if I have those two things, even you don't even have to have them mastered, but just your intention of saying, hey, I'm surrendered to God, I'm surrendered to my spiritual identity, or whatever the case may be. I'm learning and growing and developing in that. It could be Christianity, Buddhism, whatever the case may be. I'm not here to judge anybody's path. Like your path is your path, but something that's guiding me. And I'm focused on preparing myself for family. And I'm also honoring my family that I have. So it means you might have to reconcile things with your parents, your grandparents. You may talk to your siblings, like learn your family history, learn the lineage, learn what things have they been through that you may have been received, passed down that you're not aware of, like healing and breaking those family curses. That's going to open up space now for you to look at purpose on a deeper level and talk about that sacrifice of, okay, this is what I want to do. What skills do I need? What I need to be learning? Who can I be around? What's my network going to look like? All those things prepare you and put you in position to not only magnetize your divine partner, but magnetize you to who you're really meant to be. And that is what it has to start there. Every man won't do that work to the same degree. And that's where we get the dominance hierarchy of the man who does the most at the, to the furthest extreme, wins the race. So if someone stops at 10, somebody's gonna stop at 9, someone stop at 8, someone stop at 7. Like, anyone still left? Hey, 5 more of y'all. Got to outrun 5 more people. Is there 4 more left? I run 4 people. Somebody's going to stick to the end of the race. There's 100 of us starting, 100% of people. We all start the race. Somebody's going to stop first. That person's going to lose. The person who stops at 100, like, y'all go ahead. That man's going to lose. But somebody's going to stop. Somebody has to stop first. Someone has to stop first, and someone has to stop last. That's what every man has to realize. Someone has to stop first, and someone has to stop last. And the person who stops last may just keep going. And you got to decide where you fit in the middle of that. Am I going to stop in the middle? Am I going to be 50th, 49th? Like, you got to decide. And you got to accept whatever comes with that. Now, you can do that in an honorable way. Like, you may stop at $30,000 per year. Okay. There's maybe that, but you got to what if you stop at 25,000, you take care of yourself, but you're not looking interested in family? That may be your path. If it's done in an honorable way. So like there's ways to go about it. It's just we have to look at the whole landscape and God, family, purpose, and then I'll say consciousness as far as awareness. How conscious are you of the dominance hierarchy, and where are you stopping at on the race? There's no shame in stopping because everybody got to stop somewhere. But it's like, where do you stop? And do you feel okay with stopping? Right? Like, do you feel content stopping? Because everybody don't run the rat race forever. Some people do. Some people are, like built to run the race for a long period of time because that brings them fulfillment. It don't bring person number 80 fulfillment to run the race. They're like, okay, I can take care of myself. That's all I want to do. Like, I'm not trying to do that forever. And that may be fine. Right? So it's just a matter of self-awareness. But I think the deeper you go into self, the more you see like, hey, I can run a little bit. You start thinking about these things, thinking about them will probably put you above 50 already because you're going to be moving at a different speed.
Yeah, there's the consciousness is I see the being conscious of, what you call kind of family curses and what's brought into us, what's kind of transmitted down our family lineage, what would, might be called these days family trauma. It's just so important to start to spot, because if not, it actually, that thing there can wreck all your other plans, all your other kind of things you want to do, your other spiritual maturing, your financial maturing, because you don't have, you have this need, the need you talked about before, that like an empty bucket, you know, and you don't quite, if you don't work out why you feel you need to fill that need, you know, it could end up being addiction and all sorts of other things that could ruin your life.
Yeah, it's just, those are like pillars. They're like, you know, without one of those things, I think it's like a, you know, it's a triangle that all on 3 different pillars. If one falls, the building collapses. And so many men may have one, or, you know, most men probably have one. That's the harsh reality. Like, most men have one. A group of men, you know, a nice chunk of men have 2, and very few men have all 3. So it's like, which one do they have? You know, it's just, if most were going to have one, then men's like, they decided which one to pick. Do I pick God? Do I pick family? Do I pick? There are some men who pick family, and they're like, they want to be good husbands, they want to be good fathers, but they can't, because they haven't figured everything else out. But they want to be there. Like, I'm here, but it's like presence isn't enough. Some people pick purpose or finance. It's like, you're doing what you love, but your family is neglected, or you're not present, or you got someone pregnant, not supporting the child, the mother, or your spiritual life is in disarray. Or they pick God and have God, and they're like, God's gonna get me through this. God's gonna get me through this. But it's like, God can't run the race for you. Like, God can be there, like, as inspiration, and their spiritual beliefs can be like, you understand this consciousness and awareness, like, okay, I'm gonna get there. But it's like, God can't make your feet move. You gotta run. You gotta run the race. And having God, again, there are pastors who cheat on their wives. It doesn't make you a family man. So we have to prioritize all 3, and that is what really crystallizes us as men and allows us to, again, choose the right partner, and then we can create a family and teach it to our children from a place of, you know, from scratch. Basically, they don't have to start with where we started at. They can start the race at a different place, and now they can run faster. And then that's where legacy is born, by every man who chooses to run the race further enough so that children can see healthy dynamics, divine feminine woman, divine masculine man, and continue that process. So it's going to be a continued thing. And I call it, I usher in this concept of like spiritual elitism. Like, it's a thing. Like, there is a hierarchy. Like, even you look at Christianity, all the angels are not on the same level. Like, there's different levels of angels. Even if you go on the dark side, there's different levels of demons. Like, spiritual hierarchy is a very, very real thing, and it materializes in the human psyche as far as how far are we going spiritually as a foundation, and how are we living life on top of it. Like, how does a material life reflect as above, so below? So our material life should reflect in some capacity, not maybe not, I'm very spiritual, so I should be a millionaire, but I'm spiritual and I'm industrious. I work hard. I have discipline. So I have my family is taken care of. Like, we're not deeply stressed over money. Like, we have the things that we need, and we're not necessarily, like I said earlier, we're not a hyper consumer family. Like, because we understand that family and God and purpose are the things we need. We don't necessarily need more clothes or a better car or a bigger house. Like, we have ourselves, we have love, we have connection, and we have the things we need. We're not going to go hungry. That's prosperity. You know, you got prosperity at $50,000 a year or 30,000. Like, there are ways to, you know, enact finances in a certain way, but we've got to focus on all 3 as men, and the women will then multiply everything we have going. They're going to relieve so much tension and so much stress and so much burden from us that it allows you to think about another level. Because once we have family, men go into a different drive, which is why married men tend to make more money than single men. They get promoted more than single men because they marriage is the status symbol. that's a stable man. So we just got to prioritize as men. Like sexual liberation sounds good for men, but men is still about honoring God, honoring yourself, so that you can find a wife and honor her and your children.
It's true. I was looking at our pillars, looking after those things that we can build, like you said, build a foundation which we can grow on. And then once we have developed family, we have a higher purpose. We develop a higher material purpose. Like, you know, God will guide you as a single man, but it's not materialized. You can't see it, you can't experience it. And then when a man has children, I see this with men I know, I don't have children myself, is they're like, oh wow, like I need to look after and protect this little being and make sure this being's life is as good as it can be. And they almost find another gear often for a lot. You know, some men it goes the other way around, right? They have a child and they're like, oh my God, I can't do this. I can't believe in myself. I'm not going to do this. And it goes completely. But a lot of men we see is they move up another gear and they're like, oh, I've really got a reason to live and create something for someone else to stand on, so they don't have to have the same struggles and worries and life that I had to go through.
Yeah. That's the beauty of life. You know, it's like at some point our life becomes almost insignificant. And children bring a new level of significance for ourselves, even our parents. Like think about, you know, parents are like, okay, my children are grown now and they're creating children. Like they're in their 30s and 40s creating children. Like their life is like, okay, I'm 60, 70, 80. It's like I kind of losing spunk for life. This new child brings in new life for them. They get the parent a second time. They get to see it a different way. And if that process has happened and they saw you mature and grow, they get fulfillment out of seeing, like they get to see the legacy. It becomes real for them. Like, wow, my son became this amazing father, this amazing husband. That gives them so much life. My daughter became this amazing wife, amazing mother. Look at my grandchild. I know when I'm gone, they're going to become an amazing person. If they get to live to be great grandchildren, it's like that becomes the thing now. It's like, wow, look at my family. Look at my family go. And that's supposed to be the beauty of life. And we rob ourselves of that so much by either prematurely getting in situations or being with the wrong people, and family becomes, you know, like, oh man, here come the in-laws, like, or here come, this person. It's like we have so much hostility in the family that it's really disrupting that process of like really being able to enjoy the full life cycle and what that means to create a legacy and to impart wisdom instead of trauma. And like I said, I believe we'll have people get there to kind of, you know, be the light bearers of what family can look like. Society as a whole, like I think it's going to take some kind of major cultural event that like shocks millions of people to like, okay, this is not the way to go. Because right now it's still normalized, even though we have the data and statistics to back up, like this is not the way to go. But family is our anchor at the end of the day. It's like that's what we pass on. That's how we live through, you know, our descendants. And you know, we'll hopefully get back there, you know, like it's or get there in the first place. Maybe we've never been there. That's possible. We might have never been there in the first place.
Maybe this is the next step on the stairway to reaching that. I really love what you said there. I really love that the families. It's like I see like a building almost. You know, we build and we build and we build. And when the great grandparents are there to see it, they can see the foundations that they built. They see the second level and the level up, and they can really relax into that energy. They can really be like, we can bask in what we've created and what we've been part of creating. I think that's a really beautiful way to.
You can leave Earth peacefully, you know, like you can transition peacefully, knowing like, wow, like imagine leaving Earth and your family's in disarray. Like that can't be a good feeling. Like you're already like contemplating your mortality, and you know your family's not good. You know your son's going through addiction problems. You know your grandchild's not being protected. You know, like that's not a peaceful place to be in.
No.
And so like we're doing our parents, our grandparents disservice when we create this chaos. It's like how can we give them more peace? Maybe they didn't have the best life. Maybe they didn't do everything the right way, because we didn't do everything the right way. No one does. But how can we let them have more peace in their transition? Because we want that same thing for us one day. But we're just so disconnected from, you know, even the mortality of it all, because we're not attached to the family, which means we're disconnected from the mother, from the womb, from life and death. We're not really living in the real world almost. We're living like a la-la land. Like, okay, I can do whatever I want, forever long as I want, until the consequences pop up, and then we're like, oh shit, I want to be married one day, but not anymore. But I got, you know, children, and what am I going to do? And now the family's already fractured, and most times they go unhealed. Like, people don't get healing. People have divorces, and they're bitter until they die, and like the family's like, it's just normal. Like, okay, just get divorced. Like, it's just, we have too many outs. We have way too many outs, and we got to go inward. We got to reflect spiritually. Like, what is our divine purpose here? Like, we have a material purpose as men. We have a divine purpose as men, and that is anchored in family. And, you know, the Bible says, honor the parents, you know, and one day we want to be honored, right? So we have to pay it forward. We have to, if we want honor as parents, then we have to honor our parents. We want honor as grandparents. We want to have to honor our grandparents. And we want to teach those principles to our children and our grandchildren, our great-grandchildren, so they can learn and adopt, because society may get worse. They may need more teaching to help them really solidify those principles in their minds, because things may get worse. Like I said, 50 years, marriage could be like obsolete. They're like, oh, we don't get married anymore. It's like, my family does. Maybe y'all don't, but my family still does. We have structure, we have stability, we have togetherness. But it's just a matter of, you know, every man sets that standard for themselves and for their family. Like, wherever you run is also where you take your family. So if I stop at 50, that's where I take my family. And I got to be okay with that as a man. And if I'm okay with that, then just a matter of letting them go further. Maybe they go to 40. Maybe they go to, like I said, that whatever that stairway takes them, because everyone has their own specific path. Like, my stairs go a certain way, your stairs go a certain way. Doesn't, like, we're not even on the same staircase. We got our own internal staircase, and we have to walk our path as men. And when men walk their path, society is better for it.
Amen. Definitely. I have one more question. One of my listeners, you particularly answered this question from yourself, and you can answer this really. You know, I feel like I've answered a little bit of this, but you know, you can answer it really succinctly. Is asking around things like pornography. Have they perpetuated unhealthy sexual energies? And, you know, what sort of role do platforms like Disney and some of the fairy tales we grew up, movies even we grew up watching and consuming, create like unhealthy expectations around monogamy in relationships?
Man, that's a deep one. I mean, I have a media background, so like, I'm aware that 99% of people are not media literate. And like, so as a media professional, we have to go through media literacy, and we have to learn like how to decipher media and decipher narratives. And most people are not able to do that all the time. But pornography as a whole for sure has such a astronomical shift on one's perception of sex that it's ultimately damaging. Like, it's not, there's no question about the damage of it. Like, it is, it's not sex, it's sex entertainment.
Yeah.
And I think people have to understand, like, you know, if we go play basketball, me and you, we're not going to play like the Lakers. Yeah. We're going to play like me and you playing basketball. It's not going to look the same. And so we're like talking about sex entertainment that is made for you to watch so that they can show advertisement. Like, that's how they monetize any media platform. It's like that. So these things are fantasies, and these things are edited and scripted, and they have lighting, and it's like, my wife doesn't look like that. Yeah, they edit out all of this woman's beauty flaws, and she's had surgery done, and they edited. They it's like this is a Hollywood movie set, and that's nothing like sex. Sex is not a Hollywood movie set. And we like removed from the sacredness and the spiritual aspect of sex is missing. And it kind of goes back to that need of like, a lot of men have porn addiction, and cutting out porn is like because a lot of this, like I said, the game is almost rigged, but a lot of this is thrown on young boys at a young age. I don't know when the first time I seen any kind of pornography, but I'm almost want to say it was before 13.
Yeah.
Like it might have been 9, if I'm being honest. Like I'm trying to, like, I don't know when, but if you told me it was 9, I would believe you. Like 9 or 10, I might have seen my first like pornography scene. So like think about that as from ages 10 to 20. Like that is programming your brain. Also, you add in sex culture, you add in sexual liberation. It's like it's almost made for you to lose. It's like, I'm going to make sure these men lose, and make sure these women lose, and make sure these families lose, and make sure that everyone is not their best selves, and make sure everyone is suffering so I can control them. That's what it seems like. I don't know if that's true or not, but I just know that's the way it seems. And it's very, even breaking that addiction is very difficult. And even after you break the addiction, breaking the perception of sex is still difficult. If you've been programmed to ejaculate or be stimulated by certain images and certain scenes and certain perspectives of sex that aren't necessarily realistic, or you want to enact things out that may seem good because you programmed yourself to like those things. And even from a woman's standpoint as well, she likes certain things because she saw them in a video. And so now you two are trying to live things out to reenact those moments where you were in a vulnerable state, where you wanted a quick fulfillment, to where you're not even really connecting with your partner. You're not really spiritually in tune with your partner. You're not emotionally present. You're not like it's not even anything beyond the physical act. And sex is so much more than the physical act. It's more mental than anything. It's more spiritual than anything. And the physical act is just a small aspect of it. And it's really hurts men, and it hurts marriages. Like a lot of marriages suffer because they're not in tune sexually. Like they may have good sex, like that's what they may have pleasurable sex, but they don't know why things burn out is because their pleasurable sex was based on an image they had when they were 20 years old. And then they get 35, 40, and the image isn't so cool anymore. And the aspect isn't necessarily that it was never cultivated spiritually, emotionally to have that. So it was always based on this porn scene or this fantasy. And now you get 45, 50, there's no sex because I'm not that same person anymore. You're not that person anymore. I don't even think like that anymore, but that's all we ever practiced. We never practiced anything else. So our sex life is broken. If anything else was already flawed in here, it just makes us go separate even more. So it's like this game. If people think about how much we're, influenced and programmed with certain things at young ages that we don't necessarily question, it's almost set up for you to lose. Like the probability of you losing in this game is so high. It's like you're gonna lose. Porn addiction since 13. 25 sexual partners between 18 and 30. No sexual discipline, no drive, no purpose. Like 2 children out of wedlock. Married this person because they had 2 children. Like you can almost see like that's not gonna work. That ain't gonna work. That's not gonna work. And it's like we don't have to be perfect. We just have to improve. Right? Like we still gotta make mistakes, but some of our mistakes don't have to be like, you don't have to touch the stove and burn your hand to know you shouldn't do that. Right? Like there are some things that are already proven in human history to say, hey, this isn't working for us. Let's not do that one. Like, I don't have to make the same mistake to learn from it. And we're at that point. And so even when it comes to like the Disney media and the Prince Charmings and all these different things that create narratives that we play out and that we expect, but it's we got to get back to the fundamentals of God, family, and purpose, and eventually I think we find our way back to self. And if we're in tune with self, I think everything else kind of falls in place because we see what's what and what's not, and we're able to see how to navigate this world better. And I think I don't think we will ever get to a point in the near future of removing the ill things that are creating dysfunction. I think we have to create people who are not necessarily opposed to those things, but who don't consume those things. We have to lower demand, basically. Like when demand is low, when porn becomes an underground thing again, it's like, okay, now that's like, it's almost weird to watch porn. It's like, you watching porn? Okay. Like, you all right? Like, you good? Tell me watch porn now. It's like, oh, who you like? Well, I like this person, this person. Like, people got favorite porn stars now. It's like, that's a common thing. Porn stars got Twitter profiles, they media personalities. It's a crazy world. But demand is very, very high. So like if you lower demand on anything, the value drops. And then the supply drops. And then eventually it becomes its own obscure thing. It probably won't ever go away, but it will be more obscure than it is now. Where today it's like everywhere. Instagram, Twitter, like you can just find porn, just like literally on social media, just find porn. Like, yo, what is porn? On the gram? Yep. Porn on the gram. You're welcome. Pornhub got an Instagram account. Like, yo, y'all got an Instagram? It's like nobody, it's like think about this. 30, 20, 15, even 10 years ago, porn it was much more taboo. Porn's not taboo anymore. Porn's regular. We're at a point where prostitution isn't really taboo. It's like, do what you gotta do. OnlyFans, go ahead. Escort service, no problem. Back pages, cool. Like none of it, like sexual liberation that has gone to the furthest extremes from the women's rights and autonomy, it's evolved with technology. And that's where I think the difference is between when we create certain freedoms, we don't always account for how society will evolve outside of that. So we didn't see social media coming when we wanted sexual liberation and autonomy. But now we have technology, and now sex is everywhere. You got swipe left, swipe right apps, hookup apps. Like it's evolving, and those dynamics, they have consequences. We can't exchange energy with no consequence. Even if there's no child or no long-term partnership, that energy is still with you. And it just becomes a normal habit. I swipe left every other day and pick up a new chick. Guess what? Something's happened to my energy every time I do that. And men don't admit it, but your self-worth goes down. You swipe left, hook up with this chick. It feels good in the short term, but like you don't go to bed thinking like, oh man, I'm this amazing guy. Because subconsciously men are aware of the dominance hierarchy. Consciously is where we have to bring it to, but subconsciously men know where they are in the hierarchy. Like there's no way that a basketball player, even someone like Kyrie Irving, is not LeBron James. Like he knows for a fact he's not LeBron James. There's no doubt about it. Maybe Kevin Durant could be like, I'm up there. Maybe Giannis or Steph. But even someone as great as Kyrie, who's one of the greatest 30 players alive of basketball, alive, like the top 0.000000001% of players is still not the top guy. He knows it without anybody saying it. So we know where we fit in the hierarchy, but subconsciously we just let it eat away at us. And I'll do the same thing tomorrow because now this is my self-fulfilling prophecy. This is who I am. I'm guy number 100. And the thing about the dominance hierarchy is it's really not you versus other men. It materializes that way, but it's really you against yourself. It's like, where are you at on your own race? Where did you stop in your own race? Because there's 100 versions of you. Which one are you? And that's where it becomes your own internal thing. Like, I don't want to be better than you. I want to be better than me. my drive is to be better than me. Like, what's my number one? What's the version of me that doesn't stop? I want to know what that looks like. If that lands me at number 50 in the hierarchy, so be it. But I want to know what it is. I want to see my potential be fulfilled. If it lands me at 100, damn, maybe I just sucked. But hey, I did my best. All a man can do is his best. But when you don't do your best as a man, you don't. There's something. Because we're made to contribute. When you're not giving your best as a man, you feel less than. If you plan on waking up a certain time and you don't wake up that time, you're like, damn. It could be 10 minutes after the fact. You're just like, oh man. So we're just here to contribute, and men just have to. We have to. If you want to become, an upper echelon version of yourself, put God, purpose, family first, and put down some of the media, put down some of the influences, and really like go inward. Like, what does the best version of you look like? And let that be your driving force, and everything else takes care of itself. Everything else.
It's a powerful end. It's a powerful statement there. So I imagine that the listeners are wondering where they can hear more from you, hear more of your talks, maybe work with you. I know you have some books as well that you've authored. Where can people find you?
For sure, you can find me on Instagram at Malik Taught Me. That's JMALIK Taught Me, TAUGHTME. And I have my most recent book, Entering Her Vortex, talks about the male and the masculine feminine dynamic and healing their relationship so that we can have spiritually purposeful union. So it's a book that is made for men and women to read, to understand the divine masculine, divine feminine, the roles that we both play in each other's life, and then also the path to getting there, and also some of the mistakes that we make on that path, and then how to heal from those mistakes. So it's all in the book. People are loving it so far. We're sold out of physical copies right now. Going to do some restocking. So by the time you listen to this, it should be restocked. That's on jmalikteachings.com. And shoot me a message or DM or comment on a post. I'm on Instagram, usually posting stories, going crazy, but you can follow me there.
Awesome, brother. Thank you for your time. Thank you for being so generous with your time. I know we've run over. Time has really flown by.
Yeah, man. It's great. But thanks for having me, man. We were supposed to do this a while, for a while now, but I feel like everything happened in perfect timing. So definitely appreciate you for letting me, share the platform.
Thank you, brother. And to the listeners, if you've enjoyed this episode, if you've taken something from this, please get in contact with myself or Jane. Just tell us what you've learned. Tell us what you're taking away. Because as creators, it's always beautiful to hear when people are able to take these ideas, their concepts into their life and actually start to act them and make a difference. Or even if it just pings a light bulb in your head, really, really sharing that helps to kind of anchor that into you as well. So I say a big thank you to Jay. And thank you very much, listeners, and I'll see you next week.